Hi, and welcome to the Expansive Journey. My name is Julie, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the stages of a spiritual awakening. And first off, I have to give a few disclaimers. And the first disclaimer is that I'm going to share from my own individual perspective today, and your personal experience is going to be different than mine for sure. And I recommend that you take what resonates and leave the rest. My intention is to put words onto something you might experience and sort of help you validate your own experience. Because I remember when I was starting to wake up, I didn't trust what was going on, and I thought maybe I had lost my mind. And in some sense, that's sort of kind of what's happening as well. Your mind loses control over you, but you're not losing your mind. It's a very real experience. And that's my intention with this video, to help you sort of navigate the initial parts of this process. And the second disclaimer is that there are teachers out there that are way more realized than I am. So I cannot share with you further than I've gone myself. So if you want to hear about the later stages of realization, I recommend that you check out another teacher as well. And the third disclaimer is that we always need to take stages and steps and sort of maps with a grain of salt, because this is actually a conceptual way of perceiving spirituality. It's a mental framework and a mental way of putting this into context and putting this into a way that the mind can understand. And at some level, it can be helpful, but eventually it will be a hindrance when we try to transcend what the mind can do. So take it with a grain of salt and always check in with yourself. And I will try my best to explain this as good as I can from my individual perspective. So one of the first things that usually happens to us when we start to sort of seek beyond the conceptual reality is that we start to have this intuitive, like this intrinsic deep feeling that something isn't quite right, or something is inherently painful about this way of existing. And I remember that I had that feeling when I was traveling. I was 21, quite young, and I remember that I was sitting on a bus and I was actually thinking that my life is pretty good right now. My life is actually good. It feels good to be alive. I felt peace and I felt gratefulness for that moment. And at that point, I really never resonated that much with religion. So I was more on the scientific side of the beliefs about how the world functioned. So you can say that I thought I was a developed monkey, part of a species that was developed from monkeys. I still resonate with that in so many ways, but I was not aware of the universe being alive. I felt that the universe was a dead space, and I was living on a planet where everyone were sort of fighting for their own survival. And that was it. I had no idea what was beyond that, the matrix or this conceptual human world, right? So I remember I felt that moment of peace, and right after followed a moment of emptiness or a sense of meaninglessness. Almost like I started to question, like, this is it? This is all there is? Just hustling and struggling through life just for these very few moments of peace. And I realized that I hadn't felt that way since I was a very young child. And I was thinking that my future, am I only going to struggle and struggle just for a very few moments of peace? And then I realized that the way I was living life and the way I had started to sort of structure my whole reality was inherently or intrinsically painful. It was intrinsically painful to be alive. To be a human was, it didn't feel good. And I realized that the moment I had an experience that was different, it felt good, it felt peaceful. And I realized that, ooh, this is not my normal state. In fact, my normal state is rather worrying, stressed out, worrying about the past, worrying about the future, always in this state of problems, you can say. And that was sort of normal in the reality that I was living in. It was not seen as something special. And that was just the way I learned to live life. Life's a set of problems that I need to solve constantly. That's at least how I can recall it in this moment. And it was this growing emptiness that was growing inside of me until I could not ignore it anymore. And this is sort of when we start to really question. And I got a glimpse of unfiltered reality. And that's the moment when you start to see that the concepts and the constructs and the ideas that you have been told about the world start to sort of loses its solidity. And that's sort of when we wake up from the matrix, right? It's like taking the red pill and we start to see through the veils of illusion how we are living in this system that is feeding off our energy, and we're never getting freedom, financial freedom or time-wise freedom, and we're spending our whole lives trying to reach a goal and never really feeling into this moment and enjoying life, right? And when we get to that place, many of us, we might go into the state of manifesting the life we want, and we might start to heal ourselves, and we might start to look for answers at that moment when we sort of admit to ourselves that some reality has changed for me now. Reality has changed forever. I experience reality in a different way than I used to. It can feel sort of like waking up inside of a dream, and the dream is still going on around you. It can feel like becoming sober at a party when you've always been drunk. And then you start to realize that, oh my God, this is what I've been doing. This is what's been happening. And I haven't realized how blind I've been to reality. It can feel something like going around in a dark room your whole life, and then someone turns on the lights gradually, usually, and you start to see the mess in the room. And you want to start to clear up the mess, right? It can feel like a fish that discovers air and realizes that it's been in water the whole time. And I'm using these analogies because it's really hard to sort of put this into a context. It's not a mental idea. It's actually a direct and immediate experience, a different way of experiencing the world around us that feels more real. And we cannot ignore this. We cannot look back and suppress it and pretend like this didn't happen. Because for most of us, including myself, it becomes a permanent new way of being. And in this way, or in this process, we usually don't understand what's going on. The mind doesn't get it, and it tries to make sense of all of this. And it will normally include our experience or our new way of experiencing the world. It will normally sort of claim that as a part of its identity. So it will normally sort of include that in a sense of self, in a sense of I, which is still the false self, but it becomes a new ego identity, which is a spiritual ego. It is kind of hard to avoid that, I think, unless you have a teacher that is awakened, that is sitting next to you and sort of like pointing this out. It's very easy to become blind here. And this can happen in a mild form where you're like just identifying as, oh, I'm now an awakened person now. I'm now an awakened person. Or it can be more extreme examples of this, where people develop sort of like messiah complexes and stuff like that. And it's tempting to judge that, but it's actually also the mind that can judge those experiences. And I sort of choose to see it as rather natural, as a natural way of the mind, the poor mind, the poor mind, trying to understand what is going on here, right? Trying to sort of find a sense of safety in this very unknown new reality that we actually, it's like we're newborn again. We don't understand what is going on. And the mind is actually trying to do it the best it can to stay alive and to make sense of what is going on and to find a sense of stability or something to hold on to in this new experienced reality that is more unfiltered, and it doesn't have all the concepts and constructs and ideas to hold on to anymore, because something has woken up beyond the mind and starts to see through that illusion. And that doesn't happen on a mental level. It happens on an intuitive knowing level. So we tend to get wrapped up in our spiritual ego for a while. And some people actually stay there for the rest of their lives, and they are comfortable with that. And that's fine too. There's nothing wrong about this, as long as it's not used to harm anyone, to exploit people, for example. That's also a consequence that may happen. But to sort of resonate with being a spiritual person and sort of like identify with those labels, if you like that and if you feel comfortable with that, keep on doing it. But when it turns into a sense of superiority to people who are not going through the exact same experience as you, then we can say it turns into a spiritual ego in a negative sense. So if you're really ready to awaken and remember what you really are, your true self, then it has to come to a point where we have to wake up from the dream of the person, the dream of the thing we think we are, the idea of what we are, including our spiritual sense of self. And we have to realize that our whole identity is just a set of thoughts and mental constructs that we have identified with. And that's when we start usually with self-inquiry or just a general questioning of what we actually are. And some people might do this very intuitively on their own, but many people, including myself, I needed a teacher to sort of realize that I was stuck in that spiritual person identity. And for me, that didn't bring me peace. It didn't bring me sort of the answers to my questions, the answer to the question, who am I? What is my nature? And what is the truth about reality? And that's when we do self-inquiry, and we start to really get in touch with our own nature. And that's when we wake up to our true nature. And I'm not going to say more about that. First of all, because I'm still in the process of realizing that. I've had glimpses of awakening, but I've not experienced Kensho. It's not something you can imagine, think yourself into being. It's not something you can manifest or affirm or create. It's something that needs to reveal itself. And when it does, there is no doubt. It's self-evident, and it's more real than what used to feel real. It's more real than the old reality. And it's something that the mind cannot grasp. So I'm going to stop it right there and leave you with that. And I hope you got some value out of this video. Lastly, I would recommend that you always trust your own experience, your own immediate experience right where you are right now. And when we start to realize that the conceptual spiritual world, whether that's New Age or metaphysics or Hinduism or Christianity, when we start to move out of the mental spirituality and into the actual reality that we are experiencing, that the self-evident reality, the reality that we know we are in. No one has told us that we are actually experiencing right now. When we start to trust that and move out of the conceptual storyline about spirituality and who we are and into the actual reality, that's a huge step on our spiritual journey. And it requires courage because we find a lot of safety in the conceptual spiritual world, the spiritual matrix, as I like to call it. And again, wherever you are on this journey, trust that you are where you're supposed to be, or you wouldn't be there. And if you feel ready to move beyond the conceptual spiritual mind and into the present moment, and if you feel ready for all of this, I recommend that you find a teacher that can guide you. In my program, Awaken You, I will show you how to anchor your consciousness into the present moment, and I will touch upon self-inquiry as well. So if that resonates, and if you are curious about that, then you can book a call with me, and we can together assess whether or not I can serve you at the highest level in my program, Awaken You. And I almost forgot to mention that if this video resonates with you, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also drop a comment below and let me know how this made you feel, if it resonates or if it doesn't. Let me know. And until next time, much love and namaste.